Okay, so here in 1 Samuel chapter 25, David's on the run with some of his mighty men, and they're down, it says, at the beginning of the chapter, in the desert of Paran. And here's what it says. I'm going to start in verse 2, 1 Samuel chapter 25. It says this: A certain man in Maon who had property there at Carmel was very wealthy. He had 1,000 goats and 3,000 sheep, which he was shearing in Carmel. His name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. She was an intelligent and beautiful woman, but her husband was surly and mean in his dealings. He was a Calebite. While David was in the wilderness, he heard that Nabal was shearing sheep. So he sent 10 young men and said to them, Go up to Nabal at Carmel and greet him in my name. Say to him, long life to you, good health to you and to your household, and good health to all that is yours. Verse 7 says, Now I hear that it is sheep shearing season. So when your shepherds were with us, we did not mistreat them, and the whole time they were at Carmel, nothing of theirs was missing. Ask your own servants, and they will tell you. Therefore, please be favorable towards my men, since we come at festival time. Please give your servants and your son David whatever you can find for them. So when David's men arrived, they gave Nabal this message in David's name, and then they waited. Now you need to know that it was pretty normal for military troops to just seize whatever they wanted from people's crops, from people's livestock, to feed their troops. It was just kind of standard practice. But David doesn't do the standard practice here. He basically says, I'm going to come as gracious as can be and say, Nabal, I mean you no harm. I want to bless your family. We haven't stolen any of your stuff. But if you could find a little extra stuff that maybe you could feed me and my men, that would really be great. Well, this is when Nabal's little lawyer shows up. And I'm going to read to you his response in verse 10 and 11. Nabal says this: He answered David's servants, Who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days. Why should I take my bread and water and the meat I have slaughtered for my shearers and give it to men coming from who knows where? In other words, his little lawyer says, Hey, I got a right to my own stuff. I'm not going to give any of it to you. Who do you think you are? Maybe you're just some runaway slave. I'm not giving some local yokel even a glass of water for free. Now that's why 1 Samuel 25 calls him a surly man, a cranky man. Nabal's little defense lawyer causes him to return evil for good. Remember I talked about, for most of us, our little lawyer wants to file a countersuit. Well, Nabal's little lawyer says, Hey, I'm going to return evil even though you came to me with good. So now it's David's turn to respond. Listen to what David says, beginning in verse 12. David's men turned around and went back. When they arrived, they reported every word. David said to his men, Each of you strap on your sword. So they did. And David strapped his sword on as well. About 400 men went up with David while 200 stayed with the supplies. One of David's servants told Abigail, Nabal's wife, David sent messengers from the wilderness to give our masters greetings, but he retaliated with insults at them. Yet these men were very good to us. They didn't mistreat us, and the whole time we were out in the fields near them, nothing they had was missing. Night and day they were a wall around us the whole time we were herding our sheep near them. Now think it over and see what you can do, because disaster is hanging over our master and his whole household. He is such a wicked man that no one can talk to him. Isn't that a great story? The servants in the field said, Go to Abigail, this man's beautiful, intelligent wife, and say, Your surly husband, His little lawyer just did it again. David, the man who could have slaughtered and killed us all and taken our stuff, he protected us day and night. He didn't take a darn thing. And he went graciously to your husband and said, hey, is there any way you could come up with some food for my men? And when Nabal kind of tells him, forget about it, buddy, I'm not giving you anything, David gets the report and he says, strap on your swords. Isn't that what my little lawyer always says? Strap on your sword. It's time to retaliate. It's curmudgeon killing time. We've had all we can stand. We can't stand no more. David's defense team says, we want an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. We're going to give this guy the death penalty because he deserves it. He's so surly. And so in their wounded ego state, their little lawyer tells them time to retaliate. Well, this, of course, troubles Abigail. She's like, oh no, my husband's done it again. The funny thing is, she's really the only innocent person in the story here. Nabal was a fool, an ungrateful fool. David was an overreacting, ego-driven hothead. But Abigail's only flaw here is that she was married to a crabby man. She had every right to assert her innocence, but I want you to hear how Abigail, I think under the power of the Holy Spirit, responds to this situation. I'm going to start here again, 1 Samuel 25 and verse 18. Abigail acted quickly. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 fully dressed sheep, 5 seahs of roasted grain, 100 cakes of raisins, and 200 cakes of pressed figs, and loaded them on donkeys. Then she told her servants, go on ahead, I'll follow you. But she did not tell her husband, Nabal. As she came riding her donkey into a mountain ravine, there were David and his men descending toward her, and she met them. David had just said, it's been useless. I've watched over this guy's property in the wilderness so that nothing of his was missing, and he paid me back evil for good. May God deal with David, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave alive 1 male of all those who belong to his tribe. Well, Abigail saw David, so she quickly got off her donkey and bowed down before David with her face to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, pardon your servant, my lord, and let me speak to you. Hear what your servant has to say. Please pay no attention, my lord, to that wicked man Nabal. He is just like his name. His name means fool, and folly goes with him. And as for me, your servant, I did not see the men my lord sent. And now, my Lord, as surely as the Lord your God lives and as you live, since the Lord has kept you from bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hands, may your enemies and all who are intent on harming my Lord be like Nabal. And let this gift which your servant has brought to my Lord be given to the men who follow you. Please forgive your servant's presumption. The Lord your God will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my Lord, because you fight the Lord's battles. And no wrongdoing will be found in you as long as you live. Even though someone is pursuing you to take your life, the life of my Lord will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God. But the lives of your enemies he will hurl away as from the pocket of a sling. When the Lord has fulfilled for my Lord every good thing he promised concerning him and has appointed him ruler over Israel, my Lord will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or having avenged himself. And when the Lord your God has brought my Lord success, please remember your servant. That's a unique defense. It's the only kind of defense that works according to the Bible. I think there's a legal term for this. In Latin, they use the term nolo contendere, translated, I will not contend with you. I'm not going to counter. So Abigail chooses non-retaliation. The New Testament calls this meekness. Take a look with me